This video is brought to you by Brilliant. On Wednesday, some 27 million South Africans went to the polls to elect new provincial legislatures and a new national parliament. Polling ahead of the election suggested that the ANC, the African National Congress, were on track to lose their parliamentary majority for the first time. But on the eve of the election, ANC politicians were still hopeful of either eking out a majority or coming close enough to form a coalition with some of the more compliant minor parties. However, as the results rolled in over the next couple of days, it became clear that the ANC had actually underperformed the polls and will now almost definitely have to form a coalition with one of the three big opposition parties. So in this video, we're going to take a look at why the ANC's popularity is waning, the election results themselves, and what might happen next.
Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos.
So let's start with a bit of context. We've done a whole load of videos on South Africa's political and economic crises in the past, so go and watch those if you want to know more. But the TLDR is that since the end of apartheid in 1994, South Africa has been run by Nelson Mandela's former party, the African National Congress. Whilst the ANC originally did a pretty good job since at least 2009 when Jacob Zuma came to power, things have been going downhill since then. Wages and GDP per capita have stagnated, while national debt, unemployment, crime and economic inequality all increased sharply. Now, Zuma's reign was beset by corruption allegations, and in 2005 he was indicted on various corruption charges. But attempts to prosecute him have been beset by legal challenges and political controversy. Zuma was finally jailed for contempt of court in 2021, but he spent just 2 months in prison before being released on medical grounds. The release was later ruled illegal, but Zuma never returned to prison, supposedly because of overcrowding and, quote, a surge in gangsterism. In 2017, Zuma was replaced by a business tycoon called Cyril Ramaphosa, who narrowly defeated Zuma's ex-wife and political ally in the leadership ballot. There was a lot of hope when Ramaphosa came to office, but his presidency has so far been a disappointment. South Africa's economy has remained stagnant, poverty is ubiquitous, youth employment is running above 50%, and corruption has probably got worse rather than better. The latest issue revolves around South Africa's national electricity company Eskom, which, in part thanks to rampant corruption, just can't supply the country with anywhere near the electricity it needs, and has therefore resorted to rolling blackouts. Anyway, for all these reasons, the ANC's popularity has steadily declined over time, with their vote share at national elections falling from a high of 70% in 2004 to 58% in 2019. And polling before Wednesday's election suggested that they were on track to lose their majority for the first time. You might expect this trend to benefit the Democratic Alliance, South Africa's established opposition party that's economically to the right of the ANC and generally more popular with white South Africans. However, most former ANC voters have instead migrated to two relatively new, more radical leftist parties, Julius Malema's EFF and Jacob Zuma's MK party, who were both polling around 10%. For context, the EFF are a black nationalist Marxist party whose policy platform includes the forcible repatriation of farmland from white South Africans, nationalising basically most of the economy, and sending arms to both Hamas and Russia. Zuma's MK party is basically just an anti-ANC party that's mainly popular with Zulu nationalists and voters in Zuma's home province of KwaZulu-Natal. Both Malema and Zuma are former ANC politicians who basically criticise the ANC for being too moderate. Anyway, on Wednesday evening, the first results started rolling in, and by Friday morning, things weren't looking good for the ANC. With over 50% of the vote counted at the time of writing, the ANC is on just over 42% of the vote. The Democratic Alliance is on 23%, Zuma's MK party is on about 11%, and the EFF is on about 10%. South African psephologists expect the final results to be broadly similar to what we're currently seeing, or perhaps even slightly worse for the ANC. Now, because South Africa uses a broadly proportional system, which has recently been amended to accommodate independent candidates, this means the ANC will probably have to form a coalition with one of the three main opposition parties. However, none of these options are ideal. For starters, none of the three parties are really incentivized to go into coalition with the ANC, given how much easier it is to be the anti-ANC opposition than it is to govern in South Africa. On top of that, metro-level coalitions between the ANC and EFF in places like Johannesburg have been appallingly incompetent, and Malema would probably demand that any manifesto include some of the EFF's more radical policies. A grand coalition with the Democratic Alliance would be both more economically orthodox and far more palatable to international markets, which have already reacted uneasily to the results, with the rand dropping by 2% against the dollar. John Steenhuisen, the DA leader, told The Economist in 2021 that he would want to try to cut a deal with moderates in the ANC to prevent what he described as a doomsday coalition with the EFF. But the more radical elements of the ANC would resist a coalition with what they perceived to be a white party, and it would probably only inflame the radical anti-ANC sentiment that fuels the EFF and Zuma's MK party. The DA also worry that going into coalition with the ANC will mean giving up their relatively easy role as the ANC's main critic. And unless they can somehow fix one of the world's most broken countries in just a single term, they'll end up sharing the blame when things inevitably go wrong. So this just leaves Zuma's MK party. In a sense, this might be the easiest option for the ANC, especially if they decide to get rid of Zuma's arch-rival Ramaphosa in the aftermath of these poor results. It's pretty clear that Zuma mainly wants a presidential pardon, given the enormous backlog of corruption-related charges that have built up over the years, and perhaps ANC backing for control of his home province, KwaZulu-Natal. Nonetheless, even if there's a deal to be done here, it would look appallingly corrupt, and once Zuma's got his pardon, there's no guarantee he'll cooperate for the remaining 5 years of the parliamentary term. All in all, whoever the ANC ends up forming a coalition with, it's unlikely to be good news for South Africa in the short term. Nonetheless, perhaps the optimistic take here is that this is the necessary price that South Africa has to pay if it wants to transition away from the ANC, and given the ANC's record, this may well be a price worth paying.
When making videos like this, we rely on tons of data analysis to interpret crucial economic data and understand political decisions. But this kind of analysis isn't just crucial for our jobs. As the world becomes more driven by AI and data, your job will likely require more analytical skills too. And that's why we've been using Brilliant. Brilliant is the STEM learning platform that can teach you all the skills you need in an increasingly digital workplace. They've just introduced a whole collection of new programming and LLM courses, suitable for learners at any level, taking you through everything from learning Python to understanding the importance of training data. And Brilliant isn't just about memorization and lectures. Brilliant teaches you by doing, using active learning techniques to teach you the principles behind otherwise quite complex topics, and ensuring that you actually understand what's going on, with thousands of interactive lessons in maths, data analysis, programming, and AI. Now, all of Brilliant's courses are split into easy-to-digest chunks, meaning that you can quickly and easily gain a real knowledge in just a few minutes a day, with fun lessons that you can do whenever you have time, replacing mindless scrolling on the bus or waiting for coffee with something stimulating and rewarding. To gain access to Brilliant for a full 30 days, head to brilliant.org/TLDR or click the link in the description. That way, you'll get 20% off an annual premium subscription, and they'll know that you came from us, which really helps us out. So thanks to Brilliant for sponsoring this video, and thanks to you for your support.